on multiple occasions, the Charlos have proven me wrong, specifically Jermell. If you've been watching this show, I've made predictions that I thought he was going to lose on a couple of different occasions. And he never did. So, I thought Tony Harrison was going to beat him in the rematch. I definitely thought Castano was going to win this fight. I thought Rosario was going to beat him back then, which looking back was a really dumb pick, but it was just the momentum of the moment, between Rosario dominating J-Rock. It just seemed like that was a possibility. And I think I was trying to figure out why I keep making that assumption. And it's because both of those guys have shown some gaps in their game before. And they also fight a high level of competition. So I keep thinking that this high level of competition is going to be able to capitalize on some of those flaws. And at times they are. But I think what they're both showing, and Jermell in particular, we'll just focus on Jermell. Jermell is a guy who makes adjustments, man. He makes adjustments. He fixes things. And for me, this performance against Castano really solidified, or kind of changed my thinking around what kind of fighter he is. Not that I ever thought he was a bad fighter or anything. I've always thought he was a top-level guy. But now, having seen the transitions he's made from the first fight, where he spent so much of the fight with his back against the ropes, taking body punishment, taking hard shots along the ropes. And I think the vast majority of people probably think that he lost that fight, to this rematch where he's keeping the whole fight on the end of the jab. Even when they're exchanging, he's not allowing his back to go to the ropes where he can get pinned and where Castano can kind of shove him around. Even when they were exchanging, he wouldn't do it with his back against the ropes. He would do it from an arm's length where his shots could get the most power. And even in rounds where Castano won the round, it never got to a point where Jermell looked overwhelmed. Whereas in the first fight, it did kind of seem like Castano's hand speed and offense and pressure was overwhelming to him. Castano was able to essentially throw what he wanted to throw at Jermell in the first fight. And this fight, he had to go look for it. And that was the big difference, And with Castano having beaten Soro, with getting the draw against Lara, he's already validated in a sense where we know this guy's a top-level guy. That's what makes it such a good win to me, is that this is a guy Castano is a guy with a lot of skills that can do a lot of different things. That's a handful. And it wasn't easy, but ultimately it was pretty dominant. Like, I think Jermell won 5 or 6 rounds going into the 10th, and being able to really hurt this guy and stop this guy, I mean, that's a big statement, man. It's a massive statement. And now he has got all 4 belts at 154 pounds. He's clearly the top guy at junior middleweight. He's the shot caller now. If you want to get a championship, you got to go through Jermell. Now, it's hard to know how long he's going to be able to hang on to all these belts with all of the belt politics and mandatories and which one's going to be a stickler, about enforcing the mandatory before the big fights get made. But if you hadn't seen already, Terrence Crawford this week was on the Porterboy podcast and essentially said that I want to fight Errol and then I want to move up and fight Jermell. And, I mean, I think that's an amazing fight. Junior middleweight right now is one of those weight classes where there's a lot of talent and they're fighting each other. So there's a lot of turnover. There's a lot of guys in the mix. And so to be honest with you, I think there's a lot of great fights for Jermell. You obviously, Fundora being the most obvious size challenge. I think Jermell's 5'11" or 6 foot. This guy's 6'6". I think he's shown, even though he has some defensive flaws, he doesn't necessarily use his height the way he should. That he's a lot to handle. That tall pressure is is difficult to handle, and that he clearly has enough power to impact you physically and slow the fight down if you're somebody that wants to box and move. So I think on a stylistic level, Fundora is a very, very difficult fight for him. You know, another fight that I would love to see him in is potentially a fight with Tim Tszyu. You know, I saw his last fight against Gaucher. I like the pressure that he brings to the table. He has actually some similarities to Castano in that he's a pressure fighter. I don't know if his hands are as fast, but it looks like he's bigger and maybe hits a little harder, and is a little more relentless with the pressure. Castano's still relatively measured and calculated. He's still thinking defense. He's still being responsible. I think some of the recklessness that, not recklessness, but some of the aggression that Tszyu shows, he's going to get hit more maybe than Castano, but I think he's also going to be in position to punch maybe more than Castano. So I think Tim Tszyu is a real tough fight. You know, and I think that Jermell is a guy that could also be in the mix at middleweight if he wanted to. You know, he's beaten the top guys at this weight now and has all 4 belts. It'd be great if he defended them, but you know, there's guys at middleweight that need dance partners too. I would love to see Jermell fight Andrade or Golovkin or any of these guys. I think that this performance for me kind of puts him in the mix against any of those guys. And he's got the frame for it. His brother's already moved up to middleweight, whereas they both went pro at 154. So it just doesn't seem like that much of a stretch. On a personal level, I think the fight that I would want to see most is a fight between him and Crawford, potentially, or the winner. You know, I don't think he'll fight Errol because they're in the same camp. But if Crawford were to beat Errol Spence, you know, I think a fight with him and Charlo would be gigantic.